Good evening, everybody. My name is Will Severo. I'll be your host. Today we have Bill Poliso, James Santana, and Joseph Sanchez. All three of them are candidates for the appointment for Montebello District 5. The Montebello City Council will be holding a special meeting on January 29, 2025 to continue the appointment process, which was intentionally stalled by Councilwoman Georgina Tamayo and Scarlett Peralta's unwillingness to nominate a candidate during the council meeting on January 20, 2025. While Mayor Sal Melendez nominated Bill Poliso, which is an excellent choice, seconded by David. However, Tamayo and Peralta said no. When asked if they wanted to nominate someone else, they remained silent. Their deliberate silence raises significant concerns about integrity of the appointment and process. Do not be fooled, they had a hidden agenda behind their silence. Scarlett Peralta and Georgina Tamayo have already predetermined that they were going to nominate Rick Alonso. Anyone surprised? Scarlett Peralta, Georgina Tamayo, and Rick Alonso all share the same campaign manager, former Councilwoman Cristina Cortez. Serious allegations of serial meetings among the tight-knit group have come into question, which indicate potential Brown Act violations by Peralta. This is another reason why Peralta and Tamayo froze up and kept quiet. I would also like to note that on this coming Wednesday, for the special council meeting, as of now, there is no public comment, which I feel is in violation of the Brown Act, California Government Code 54954.3. Generally requires that city councils allow public comments during the meetings, especially when they are open to the public and a vote is planned. However, there is exceptions to the nuances, and here's your exceptions, guys. Closed session, which it's not. Agenda items, public comments are usually listed on the agenda item. If the item is open to the public but not listed on the agenda, the council may restrict the comments on the agenda item only. They even close non-agenda public comments, so no one's going to be able to talk. So on Wednesday night, you guys were all at the process, and what did you guys think of it as far as the time frame from being able to submit your applications?
Well, I thought it was a little confusing. After all, Ms. Peralta, was the one who forced us to go so quickly. She did fight David Torres on getting the procedure in line, because David wanted more days and more applicants. And I should say, just keeping it open so more people could apply. When we got there, we were given one set of rules. And then, thank God, James sat down next to me, because he told me that he was told a different set of rules. James, you may want to elaborate on that.
Yeah, just to back up too a little bit, the application process was very interesting in that there was a city council meeting, and then followed by open applications starting the next day, probably closed on that same Friday. Really only leave applicants about 4 or 5 days to apply. So it already felt rushed for anybody that was trying to do better for their community. Fast forward to what Bill just mentioned. We received an email saying that there was 3 minutes for us to speak, and then that there was going to be questions. We didn't know the length of time, but as the night continued, we found out that the rules were kind of really just set up that evening in front of people. So it seemed very disorganized. It left a lot of the residents and even people that were visiting just extremely confused at the whole process. And then I really feel for the applicants, including myself. You had other applicants like Rocio and Rafael, who were up there alongside Rick Alonso and us, that didn't know what we were supposed to do or how to better communicate our platforms or visions. So this whole process is just really going to confuse residents, and I think that they should take note of it.
Joseph?
I agree with them. One other thing I would like to add is the ability of not being transparent. They speak in a way that it's in code. They don't speak layman terms in the sense where they make it easy for the public, make it easy for everyone to participate in this journey. One thing that is another frustrating part about it is the way they set up their teams. Their teams are not here for the benefit of the community. It's for benefit for individuals, and it's very frustrating.
While they were at the council meeting, you guys were taken, I believe, to the kitchen?
To another room.
Yeah.
To another room, okay. And it was all candidates. When you guys went back there, can you tell us like what took place? What?
Us three, we were, just talking back and forth. Mr. Alonso was in the corner, looking at his phone and writing down notes for a good 15 to 20 minutes.
Roughly. He wouldn't truly interact with us. And every time I made a comment to him, it was right away put his phone down and give us a 2-3 word reply and then go back to his notes. I do want to add that since we were not allowed to be on our phones in that room, once I got home, I went on YouTube. I saw the procedures, how it went along. I noticed that the same pamphlet that Mr. Alonso had was the same one that he was writing on. When I reviewed the footage, I noticed he was reading off that pamphlet his answers as they were giving the questions. It wasn't that he pre-wrote those answers earlier in the day. He wrote those answers when we were in that room. It was the exact same pamphlet.
There was residents that sat behind Cristina Cortez and they said that they saw her taking notes and text messaging. I find it interesting because, example, when you guys went to the room, I believe they said it was going to be 3 minutes for your speaking time just to tell about your
Correct.
background and yourself.
And we were going to get the questions, but we didn't know what question was going to be asked to us.
And by who?
And by who, correct.
And David Torres wrote his own question, so this way there would be more transparency and no one would be able to get it first.
Perfect.
And Rick Alonso, there was multiple residents even saying he didn't even look up and he was the only person really able to finish on the time slot with everything he needed to, like as if it was rehearsed. So I agree with you about the confusion that the council leaves. However, did council or staff advise you to be there this coming Wednesday or anything like that?
No, it was really just Mr. Glassman saying what the process was going to be, and it was basically just continued, until the next Wednesday. James, what did you get out of that? I was a little aggravated to be, really.
The cumulative time of this whole process took roughly 4 hours. 4 hours out of people's time. So you can just imagine Montebello, most of our residents are working residents. And in the middle of the week, to have to make this a priority when they have families and obligations and work the next morning, all of this process becomes very convoluted and confusing. And so I think that even leaving us candidates, people that did apply, confused on what the directions were going to be. So from my understanding, we should be there on Wednesday to maybe again plead our case or share what we could bring to the city. But again, just very confusing, not even really receiving any information if we have to be there.
Residents, the situation even got more complicated. Allegedly, David Torres informed Scarlett Peralta and Cristina Cortez of a job opportunity that would conflict with his role as a city and council member. This created tension between the two. It is now confirmed that Torres will be resigning in the coming days, leaving an open council seat in District 4. Since Peralta and Tamayo kept silence and did nothing to fill the seat, the clock is ticking. If David Torres leaves prior to February 5th, it will allow 3 council members to vote for District 5. We already know who it will go in favor of Rick Alonso. If it reaches February 5th and no appointment is made, the county can force a special election, which in my opinion will allow for representatives in District 5 and District 4 to pick their own representatives, because if David resigns, you're gonna need 2 appointments.
Correct. And I really believe that was the plan. That's why they didn't nominate anybody. They wanted to wait. They knew what was coming.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, it just seems awful funny. You had one at the councilwoman Peralta rushing it. Then when she got there, she didn't do anything. Why?
Joseph, I believe that you were saying that you were told to be off your phones, correct?
Yes, when we were instructed to go to the room in the back, we were asked if it would be possible to kindly stay off our phones just for, no one could get an advantage. So I said, "Yeah, no problem." We all stood off our phones except for Mr. Rick Alonso. At
And-
first, I thought it was working, so I didn't want to say, "Hey, get off your phone, buddy." I was like, "No, I understand he needs to work," so I let him sit on the work because he was writing down a lot.
And James and Bill, I believe you were saying that you received a 3-minute instructions for your
Yeah,
speaking
yeah.
time, and James, I believe you said roughly about a 2-minute speaking time that you were told. So
Yes,
can you elaborate?
When I arrived, I was told we were going to have 3 minutes to speak, and they were probably going to give some leeway, and then they were open to ask questions. And that's what I was told. Thank God when James sat down next to me, he said, "Did you make adjustments to your presentation?" And I said, "What do you mean?" And he said, "Well, it's changed. We only have 2 minutes."
So when I walked in, I was told different directions. I was told about a 2-minute timer that changed from 3, and then that each of the council members was going to ask a question. We didn't know who those questions were coming from or how many, but then it kind of developed and changed over the night.
And I believe you had 1 minute to respond for each of the questions, correct?
Correct.
Yes.
But we were supposed to get a list of the questions, but we did not know what question would be asked to each of us and from who.
Thank you. So did you guys receive the questions?
No, we did not receive the questions. The only time we heard the questions was when Mr. Glassman read them before we were escorted back out of the council chambers back to the lunchroom.
8 questions. It was actually 9 questions, but we were only told 8.
They said that they were going to give us a list of the questions, but we would not know what question would be asked. And
So what would in that direction of process was he did read questions that we were
Yeah.
told would be the ones that would be selected by the council. And it quickly changed that when we did go to the room, it seemed like there was a change of questions that each of them sort of personalized. In that personalization of those questions, when we were coming out in order, we thought we were going to each get the questions in addition to us speaking about our intro, our 3-minute, then changed to 2-minute intro. Now we had to go out there, speak this intro, not know what questions were going to be asked of us, and only have 1 minute to respond to each unknown question. This really left kind of an unfair process because none of us knew what the questions were going to be. And you have people that went first, like the candidate Rocio, who was really thrown out there to the wolves. She was put out there. She had 2 minutes to speak, and then all unknown questions for each of us. So it's just, again, a confusing process for the people that are a part of it. It seemed very staged and as though they already knew who they wanted selected, but a
I've got you
kind of
moment.
thrown. Yeah.
And I have to be very frank. I've been into a lot of business meetings. You never go in unprepared. You at least have some basis of what you're going in there to discuss. As a old quarterback, do you know how much film I watched on our future opponent? I would have never been successful if I didn't know what that defense was doing. So you can put that, as the same scenario. You need to know what you're going in up against.
True. So when Scarlett and Georgina did not make a nomination, but they also voted no for yourself and no second nomination for James, how did that leave you guys feeling sitting there?
Well, for myself, my opinion was, okay, they know David was leaving, and they already had mud on their face from my conversations with Miss Cortez when she told me to step aside, and I didn't have the votes, which came true. I didn't have the votes. Where is she? She's sitting right behind Rick Alonso in the second row, her candidate. So I think my comments came to fruition right there in front of everybody, every citizen in Montebello. I believe they knew that David was leaving and they weren't going to vote on anything. because they know now that all they're going to need is 2 votes to put their guy in, and it's going to be done. I believe that was the plan. She said she knows how to build a team, and we have a plan. So I think her plan was laid out right in front of every citizen in Montebello.
Yeah, and I'll kind of contribute to that too. I think them not making a decision is really a very loud and clear decision that they were not going to be able to pass their candidate that evening. You have 3 of us here that if you go back to the YouTube recording that's on the city website on YouTube, you're going to hear like the years of experience and our years of engagement. And then you have their candidate who really, again, after a loss in 2022, did not participate in anything in the city. And so what are they trying to tell residents? That if you're not engaged, you'll still be rewarded to sit up here and make decisions with us. And that's not a fair process. It seemed scripted. It seemed like it was a dog and pony show. And now, unfortunately, we're getting stringed along now to next Wednesday, and so are the residents. And if you're really concerned, people need to be engaged and be there.
That's the problem with transparency.
And yes.
At one meeting on a Wednesday, you want the procedures to go fast. The following meeting, you don't even
Do
pick
anything.
it. You don't even pick your own person that we suppose you like, which is Rick Alonso. I haven't spoke to Scarlett personally, so I don't know if she really likes him or not, or we're gonna pick him.
She did give him $2,300 in 2022. She also endorsed him, and from my understanding, there was a person that received a text that she was already endorsing another candidate.
So based on that, she should have picked them that night. So like now we're finding out, we always find out afterwards. And sometimes when you find out afterwards, it doesn't benefit nobody. So now it looks like we might be spending $200,000.
This process definitely, from what you guys are saying, seemed like they were shooting from the hip. This isn't the first time that we've been here. During the previous council of 2017, 2016, or roughly around there, Charles Pell, that was the city clerk, city treasurer, stepped down. City treasurer, right? He stepped down, and they appointed Ashad Meridian because he was the second runner-up from a recent election. Later on, Vanessa Delgado ran for Senate, and she stepped away, and they held a special election for David Torres. That's how Mr. Torres got his first term. Afterwards, even in 2022, they were having to deal with an election process or a appointment process for 2 candidates, which was again Rick Alonso, Marie Ledesma, for the 2 vacant seats, which they ended up rescinding.
Well, let me take a step back, because I believe when those appointments came about, we didn't have districts.
Correct.
So it was done with all of the residents in the city. Now, people are making judgment on what District 5 wants, and there was no at-large, the whole city didn't vote.
Exactly.
So it's really, I don't think is fair when you have people from another district saying who should be in District 5.
Mm-hmm. But they're still not listening to the residents, and
Correct.
that's concerning, especially since you guys are not in their district, so they, in my opinion, at least from the conversation, ignore anybody that's not in their districts because they don't have to count their votes.
And a perfect example is that when I reached out to Ms. Peralta, she completely ignored me.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel that is why districts are really bad, because I'm not going to vote for her. What does she care?
True.
She could care less whether I have a problem with her or not. All she's going to do is take care of her district and the voters there.
Which I'm going to bring up to another thing that you've been involved in for the city, for the South Side, is the Jack Mar project for the housing for former councilman Bill Molinari. Can you tell us a little bit about your stance on what took place, the residents?
Yeah, the first time that it came about was approximately 4 years ago. I guess Mr. Molinari wanted to sell his property and build a numerous amount of townhomes there. I wasn't aware of that, what was going on, but I was asked at a later date to get involved. And again, the residents on the north side of Washington organized, and they didn't want that kind of a project in their neighborhood.
Mm.
So it was really shut down by the residents the first time around. Now, from what I understand, Mr. Molinari can go ahead and build up to 12 to 14 units on his property, which the state will allow with no approval by planning or the city.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe that's what the residents, agreed to and would accept. So it went away. Right before we were working on the recall, I had a phone call that this project was coming back up again, which was pretty disturbing because we had just worked on the DePaul Center, and I was contacted by Mr. Molinari, and I said, Bill, I really can't get involved because that's a conflict of interest for myself. I says, I'm not going to go against the other residents on the other side of Washington Boulevard. They helped us down here.
Units.
And this is the second time it's come up.
Understanding that Rick Alonso may be appointed, do you feel that they were going to have the same values as the rest of you guys for the district that you guys have been involved in?
I don't believe so.
I'm gonna second that in echoing just that I don't believe that there's probably any real special interest for District 5 if there is an appointment for a candidate that hasn't been involved in the district for the last 2 years. And I'll keep echoing that. You have people that are involved in community here right in front of you, and now they want to select somebody who has not been involved and engaged and doesn't really know the issues that are affecting South Montebello, and that should be alarming.
And I have you guys here tonight because, we're showing solidarity for District 5. You three are all candidates. And I'm not sure if you guys would like to say anything more than just that.
No, we're perfectly fine with the way it's coming along. I support Bill in this endeavor. Hopefully, these next 2 years, Bill will be our candidate or a representative for District 5. And we'll go from there.
And I think the biggest thing is what you're seeing here is 3 guys that are on the same page.
Mm-hmm.
And this is what this district needs, is unity. I've been down here 32 years. Joe's been here basically all his life.
Yes, unfortunately.
And we have seen nothing but this district get the short end of the stick. I've been here for 32 years. I haven't seen one capital improvement. Not one. If somebody can show me something different or tell me something different, I'll say, hey, I made a mistake. But guess what? I haven't seen anything. It just seems that when the north side doesn't want something, let's put it down in South Montebello.
Well, just perfect example. The city council stated that going to special election will cost too much. However, Scarlett Peralta championed a dog park costing over $600,000 that's going to be in District 1, but won't endorse a special election allowing residents of District 5 to have a direct say on who should represent them.
And let me stop you there, Will. I have nothing against a dog park, but this city isn't in the financial position at this particular time to do a dog park.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? So it was really, it shouldn't have been done at this particular time. Don't get me wrong, I got 2 run around. I'd love to have a dog park. That's a luxury that only a certain amount of Montebelloans are going to use. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
So let's put that money where it's going to be used for all Montebelloans. And that's what I would do with the tax dollars. So it just seems kind of funny that you sit back and you look at the decisions that are made up there. They don't make much sense. It's personal decisions. What I want. What about what the citizens in Montebello want? Let's take it back to there. And I think these guys right here will agree with me on that.
Mm-hmm.
And let me say one other thing. I think in my last interview that we did, Will, I said that I had reached out to the council members. And I reached out to all of them. But there was one person who never responded, and that was Scarlett Peralta. And one of the reasons why I wanted to speak with her is because there was a business down here who wanted to donate blankets to the city, and this one, she was mayor. She completely ignored me. And I tell you, I was really taken back by that, because to me, she's supposed to be there for all of Montebellans, not just the voters in her district. So she completely ignored me, which I really take offense to that. And that should never happen. I don't care who it is. If you're an elected official and somebody calls you, you need to step up and find out what that resident wants.
And that was part of the problem that the residents had already in District 5 with their leadership.
Correct. So she was acting just the same as the biggest reason that I had, the biggest issue that I had with Angie Jimenez. She's acted just like her.
I think that brings up a good segue and point that Bill's trying to make, and just around the representation that we have and that we need in our community. And I think that you have 3 potential applicants right before you that really have a sense of what we want to do better for District 5, but also more so what we want to do for the city at large. We really want to be, it seems like a united Montebello to really tackle a lot of the issues that we're facing, but unfortunately we continue to be plagued with these types of decisions that are only going to cost our residents more money, and they're just going to hurt our progress overall. So I really think that it's a great reminder that we really need leadership that is going to represent all of us in addition to the district, not somebody who hasn't been active in the last 2 years. And that's one thing that we heard a lot of us that went out there talk about what we've been doing for our district and our community over the last couple of years. And you had somebody that we saw in 2022, and now we're seeing again in 2025 in this process. That should be alarming, that these people only come out when the time is there to try to take control or try to take power of a situation. So people should be alarmed, and people really need to be there this next coming Wednesday or participate in the process.
And let me elaborate a little bit more, because when Scarlett wanted votes down here, she was calling me left and right. When she wanted us to support Rick Alonso, she brought him down to the house to introduce him and everything. When she needed, when they were
2022,
correct, back in 2022. So I just find it really interesting. When she needed something, there was no problem to come down and speak with residents. But when the resident called her, she completely ignored them.
I was hearing of a rumor that there was an event for the DePaul Center to celebrate, and there was a phone call made to you.
Correct.
About Rick Alonso being able to pass out flyers.
Yeah, we had Delia Sandoval, Rissa Solitalo, and we decided to have a nice little picnic just to celebrate what we had accomplished with getting the DePaul Center nominated as a California Historical Site. Joe even attended. And right before it started, I received a phone call from Delia stating that Rick Alonso is here and he wants to pass out flyers. My response was, absolutely not. This is not a campaign issue or political. This is something for the residents of South Montebello. We turned him away, and we hadn't seen him since. And it was also really disturbing because he did not help on the DePaul Center. Not one bit.
And he's taking credit for it.
And he's trying to take credit for it. So, that's a little perturbing when, I was in it from the start to finish. I never saw him one time. So, for him to say that he was involved in the DePaul Center is pretty disturbing and trying to take credit. And unfortunately, he may be able to get that by on some residents who weren't involved and haven't been involved in the community.
Absolutely. And I believe Scarlett Peralta was supposed to attend that meeting that day.
Yeah, unfortunately, we were told that, she had a family emergency. David Torres did attend along with Georgina came down. walked around, greeted people. It was a beautiful evening. We had a little gentleman on a guitar. We served tacos. It was really nice for the community.
Going back to David Torres, how do you think it should go as far as possibly going for 2 special elections at the same time? So this way, anybody that is going to get elected, they're not beholden to the people that are currently on council for selecting them.
Well, again, you're going to have the city council telling you who's going to be the representative in these districts. Let the people vote. We spend $800,000 on a dog park, but we won't spend $200,000 on an election. Come on, people, wake up. This is what's going on. They're telling you who your representative is going to be. That's not the democratic process. That's not what I learned in school. One other thing I'd like to mention is when cannabis came to California, we were the ones that got all the growers down here. We didn't want them. I know many neighbors down here that didn't want that. Why didn't they put it on the north side? It's always South Montebello that gets everything down here that we don't want.
And I believe Governor Newsom actually said that you're going to have to all cities will be having to put retail dispensary shops.
Well, I believe that's the plan from Ms. Cortez. I believe before long, when Mr. Alonso gets his seat, that we're going to have retail marijuana dispensaries on Washington Boulevard, which also I know the residents don't want.
And I believe we're having a conversation, and you were approached by a cannabis company to sublease your building so they can have on Washington, correct?
Yes, there was a gentleman who came to the building at 405 Washington Boulevard who asked, do you know the owner? I said, well, I'm the owner. How may I help you? He says, well, we're looking to place this lease on Washington for what type of business? He says, we're in the cannabis industry. I said, you know, I want to stop you there. Thank you for inquiring, but I'm not into that. But thank you, though. And then take his business card, he got back in his car and left.
And I'm not sure if you guys know this, but they're also sitting in a quasi-judicial position, just like a judge. So when they're supposed to go into their open minding to hear the facts. And it's been clear that they're already having their decisions made for them by having serial meetings. Christina Cortez, Brad Perrin like to facilitate them. They can go around from one to the next and find out how they're voting, and they can work on it. That's my opinion.
Based on the way they acted that Wednesday night, I will come to the conclusion or the assumption that you are correct. It is frustrating when you're in a public figure. You owe the residents an answer. You don't have the luxury to stay quiet. When people elect you, they elect you to be the voice of the people, not to sit there in quietness. By them being quiet, clearly shows they are being instructed by someone. I cannot prove it, but I have a good feeling you might be right who it is.
Well, I would like to thank you guys for joining me tonight. It speaks volumes, and I hope more residents see this and they can get engaged. If you see this, please share it with your neighbors so they can hopefully put some pressure on to their elected officials so District 5 can have proper representation. They just went through a recall to remove a councilwoman just to only be told that they're not going to have a voice in the selection process. I would also like to make a point that Salvador Melendez, as mayor, is actually the chair of the meeting. Arnold Glassman is the attorney for legal advice. The meeting is being conducted by the chair, and he is able to allow public comment and engagement from residents.
What we need for our district is for our mayor to take a stand for the people. We don't need our mayor to take a stand based on legal advice only. We, as a community, especially District 3, chose him to be the leader for District 3, but us as a community appreciate him as a leader, as a mayor, representing Montebello as a whole. It would be in the best interest for the residents of District 5 if our mayor was allow us to speak this coming Wednesday. From what I hear, our District 4 representative is stepping away. If he is stepping away, then we need to have an election. We need to have the ability to vote for our own district. I would strongly advise our mayor, if possible, for the best interest of the people, to not go to the meetings, to prevent quorum. It would be in the best interest for the people, and it will be in the best interest for our mayor, since our mayor is going to need our support in his future endeavors if he still wants to be a politician for the state of California.
Thank you. In conclusion, the Montebello City Council will decide to appoint District 5 in the near future. They will need to fill the vacancy for District 4. I encourage you to stay involved and let your voice be heard. Show up at City Hall on Wednesday, January 29, 2025 to make your voice count. Call or text your council representative. Thank you guys and have a great night.